Good morning. Welcome to our first day of South by Southwest EDU. I'm your host, Carrie Byron, and this is the official South by Southwest EDU studio. I can't tell you how excited I am to be here this year. I guess I just told you. Anyway, we've got a terrific lineup of guests who will be stopping by the studio this week, including Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona, Daryl DMC McDaniels, Priya Parker, and Baratunde Thurston, and a whole lot more after that. We will be back throughout the day and each day of the conference talking with some of education world's most fascinating people. You can check out our daily schedule of interviews at our website, southbysouthwestedu.com/studio. So, kicking off this week's interviews, our first guests today are no strangers to the South by Southwest EDU. Please welcome New York Times best-selling author Nick Stone and educational equity specialist Brittany Hogan. Welcome to the South by Southwest studio.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So, Brittany, let me start with you. How would you describe empathy and equity in education?
Oh, goodness. Well, empathy and equity in education, they go hand in hand. You can't have equity without having empathy. And for us, that's really been the focus of our work, ensuring that we are giving pathways and giving people the ability, as Nick puts it, to be themselves when they're empathetic with others, and that leading to the equity that you find within the classroom. And so giving pathways involves books, it involves movies, podcasts, media, and conversations like this. And for us, that's really been the focus, ensuring that kids know how to be empathetic and then creating equity through that empathy.
So, I mean, you guys gave a virtual talk on this last year, on this very topic, but tell me what's happened to you personally since then. I heard there was...
Yeah. So the interesting thing is last year, the way empathy and equity it's a double entendre, right? So last year we focused on empathy in equity, but this year we're focused on empathy in equity. Basically the idea that there is an equity with the way that we distribute empathy. And we are both living examples of how that has been, it's been a thing. My books, man, the number of bans I have experienced since last year is a little bit absurd.
So your books have been pulled from shelves?
Oh yeah, shelves, classrooms, curriculums, etc. And it's mostly Dear Martin and Dear Justice. It's a very interesting time to be a person who writes about social issues in this country.
I mean, I heard that there was a lot of hostility and pushback, and I heard you resigned.
Yep.
I did. So since last year, I made the decision to choose myself. It got to the point where my job was becoming too emotionally harmful, and then even just indirect threats of physical harm. Basically for doing the job I was hired to do, ensuring that kids saw reflections of themselves in the spaces that they were in every day in schools. And then the media got a hold of it. And so I have done, we were on the front cover of Time Magazine. I've done Slate Magazine's podcast, Nightly News with Lester Holt, NPR, and it's just kind of snowballed from there. But I think the beautiful thing about this is, one, if they thought they were going to make me silence, it just increased my platform. And it's giving me a better space to be able to talk about the things that are important to us, the things that matter to people who look like us, and to continue to have this, this platform to create change in ways that I didn't think was possible. And so while Nick and I have been having these conversations literally for like the last 3 years about how we were going to continue to talk about these things, it's changed. And I didn't think that we were going to be in this together in this manner.
Look, I mean, you started getting threats because of my book. It's wild.
Yeah.
Like, and it's the district that she was in is a district that I visited in 2018. Like, I got an invitation to come and interact with students, and
that's how we met.
Yeah. And
does this feel new? All this hostility?
Not to me.
When you work with people, I think it's unrealistic in practice to believe that everyone's going to agree on everything. That's unrealistic. But when you take it to a place where it makes people feel unsafe is what really changed. And so for me, it was really about the decision of choosing myself and my own mental well-being that made me decide to do something different, but it has just allowed and opened doors that I didn't know would open. And that has been the beautiful part about this. And then being able to lean on each other in this space. And this is really when the work of vulnerability comes into play, is being open and honest about what we've experienced, because I know that my story isn't different than a lot of other people's story. It's just being put under a different light.
So what kind of advice would you give educators and administrators for facing this kind of hostility that's been coming?
Self-care is the most vital thing at a time like this. I find that, so most of the opposition to not only my work, but Brittany's, it comes from parents. That's been the most interesting part of all of this, is just recognizing that there are parents who do not want their children exposed to American history, exposed to things that are still going on, or exposed to anything that makes the parent uncomfortable. So with teachers, administrators, et cetera, who are facing backlash for the things that they want to use in their classrooms, make sure that you are taking care of yourself. Because if we're not making sure that we're taking care of ourselves, we have nothing to give the students. So self-care is my #1 piece of advice, and that's going to look different for everybody. What do you think?
Take care of you so you can take care of them.
Precisely.
And you can't do this work in a silo. It doesn't work that way. You can't do it by yourself. You have to find communities with other people who are interested in doing this work. And so it may be at South by Southwest ED. It may be in your classroom next door to you. It may be at a school down the block. It may be on Twitter, maybe an Educational Leadership magazine. But there are other people in this space who are hard at this work. And so you have to remind yourself that you're not in it by yourself, because there are a lot of moments that felt very isolating for me. And so it was really important for me to lean into the space of others who I know were dealing with the same things, and that were champion for children, because that's really what we're about. We're about being advocates for kids, allowing all children to see reflections of themselves and also reflections of the world. As an educator, I say our goal is always to create these global citizens, children who can talk about any topic, who are versed, who are critical thinkers. And if we take away and create this single narrative story, then we're taking away their ability to be these global citizens. And then what are we doing with our responsibility as educators? I don't think that we're doing what we're supposed to do. And so those are the things that I remind myself. And I also remind myself, I'm still in this fight. It looks very different. I'm not in a school building anymore, but I'm still very involved in having these conversations and doing this work and still being about the change that needs to happen.
All I can hear in my head right now is educators do not get paid enough.
Correct.
For this kind of world.
They don't.
At all.
Yeah.
It's appalling.
How do you think the pandemic affected the equity?
People are losing it, frankly, is the best way to put it. I know with all of this, a lot of this banning, anti-CRT stuff has to do with control. And fear. Think fear and control, but I do think a part of that longing for control comes from feeling like we don't have any over the past couple of years. So people are trying to get a grip on whatever they can in order to feel more in control in a very unpredictable world right now.
Yeah, and I think the pandemic didn't create inequities. The inequities existed in this in the system. All it did was just bring a light to a lot of them. That's all we're doing. We're seeing a light shined on spaces that have always been inequitable, but we've just chosen to ignore it or chosen not to put the attention behind it. And the thing about the pandemic has been that it has created a space where we have to sit. And sometimes we have to sit and be quiet and realize what we're experiencing. And that, for a lot of people, makes them uncomfortable. I think that being uncomfortable isn't negative energy.
No.
It's okay to be uncomfortable. Discomfort creates change, and change is where we grow and we develop into the people that we need to be sometimes. And that makes people weary. It's challenging. It's turning over new soil. We are strong believers in therapy. And that is part of that therapeutic work, turning over that new soil, doing the work that you need to do on yourself, and that's how we get better.
We live uncomfortable.
Yeah.
We are Black women.
Yeah, absolutely.
Discomfort is
our daily state.
It's our birthright in a
Yeah.
sense. And I think that the biggest struggle for me has been this opposition to discomfort. I'm like, welcome to the party, friends.
Yeah. I've never had a moment where I've been able to choose to be comfortable. The moments have been very rare and far in between, especially as a professional. Most of the spaces I have been in have required me to be uncomfortable. And it's interesting that while people fight the discomfort, we have become so normal. It's so normal to us that we don't even think about it, because that's what we have to do to survive. That's what we have to do to support the kids that we're talking about, the individuals who work with us. This has been part of our experience. And so it's really interesting watching people fight against the discomfort, knowing that this is the world that we have always had to live in.
Right, and this is where the opportunity for empathy comes in, you know, leaning into the discomfort with the knowledge that there are people who live uncomfortably, and recognizing that you don't like that feeling very much. Like, you don't like feeling uncomfortable, so perhaps the people who have to live that way don't like it much either.
I agree. And you have penned several books with Shuri from Black Panther. Do you feel like, since representation matters so much, that those books are actually creating a space for kids to see themselves?
Absolutely. So as a 7th grader, people are always so surprised by this, but my favorite book when I was in the 7th grade was Michael Crichton's Sphere. So for those who are unfamiliar, Michael Crichton is this hardcore adult science fiction writer. He passed some years ago, but he invented Jurassic Park, right? So like all of these big hardcore adult sci-fi books, this is what I was reading when I was 12. And so having the opportunity to write a Black girl who is obsessed with science and technology, it was very validating for me. And I know it's also very validating for the little girls who are like that today. Even adults, you know, it's like being able to see some reflection of yourself, even in a child character, is a really powerful thing. Also, I am not complaining about getting to spend the first half of 2021 in Wakanda.
And I think the other beautiful thing about the Shuri books is like the ink that it's written in. One of them is written in purple ink, the artwork.
A purple, a blue.
Yeah, there's a purple and a blue and a green.
Beautiful.
And I think that it's that physical representation of something that hasn't always existed in that space that's also really special about it. So besides the fact there's a little Black girl on the cover, and the cover is like, I can see them in my head. Like when you mentioned it, I started smiling, and I was thinking about it being written in purple and green and blue, because it adds a uniqueness to the book. And when kids are able to pick it up, I think that adds some of the development of the experience of it, which makes it so special.
Are some of these books the ones that were getting pulled from shelves?
No, I mean, I think everybody's like, oh, Marvel, it's perfectly okay.
Yeah.
And also, you know, those books are a very different type. They're a very specific type of book where you just have this girl who is first in line to rule a country, inventing things and saving the day, which is a type of book we need a little bit more of.
Absolutely.
You know, I do obviously write the social justice oriented books, and those are obviously also necessary, but it's good for kids to see kids who are different from them saving the day, falling in love, just being people, you know, not necessarily struggling or having to deal with the police or being locked up. Like it's good for kids to see that we can all do all things.
And that's what I think about Fast Pitch too.
Yeah.
I think about that. I think about her other books like Fast Pitch, girls who play softball and are having an amazing time and are just being kids. And
You're only saying that because you're in it.
Yeah, well, I am. I'm one of the main characters in Fast Pitch, but that is true. But it's also, it's a book I read and I literally laughed the whole time. Like the whole time I was reading it, I was texting her and I'm like, one, you know how to depict your friends very well in books, even as children. But two, it was joyful. And so I think that that's the important thing about Nick's books and other Black authors is that the ability to show the reflections of what it means to be Black, and it's not just one narrative. It's a variety of things in love, learning, growing, riding a subway when the lights and the power have gone out in New York City in a blackout, right? Playing on a team, having friends. It's this experience. And so that is what, like, to me, that's what this is about. Creating environments in a book that allows people to see people living so many different ways.
Yeah, you really touched on something too, joy. This is another thing, especially right now, that I think is vitally important.
Yes.
Finding our pockets of joy in the midst of hell on earth, basically. Like, we're still dealing, obviously, with pandemic stuff. got a whole war happening on the other side of the pond over there. And I mean, we are daily faced with just acts of inhumanity. And in the midst of all of that, it's important to find things to smile and laugh about. Even though it's interesting, I have a lot of people that are like, it just feels inappropriate to be happy. And I'm like, but being happy at a time like this, finding ways to be happy is like the most beautiful act of rebellion we could possibly engage in.
I feel like sometimes that's the only thing that's going to let me keep it together.
Absolutely.
Is finding things to be really joyful about.
Yeah,
Right.
and gratefulness.
Yeah,
and
gratitude, yeah.
that's, yeah.
So beyond books, what else can create empathy for students and educators right now?
Loving each other, supporting each other, being empathetic.
You mentioned film and television.
Film and television.
Those are excellent
Absolutely.
entries.
I think so. I think that there are a lot of spaces where we can find joy. I was saying to a friend yesterday how much we've watched TV over these last couple years, things that we're finding on Netflix and Hulu. I told Nick this morning I've started watching Scandal again.
Oh yeah.
And I have fallen in love with it all over again.
I watched it twice all the way
Like,
through.
how can you not?
How can you not, right? And so like that's to me what we're doing, finding these joys in these little moments.
Yeah.
And then once you have that joy, I think it's your responsibility to share it with others.
Right.
To continue to be that bright light for others. I think there are a lot of things that we could be upset about, that we could cry about, that we can be unhappy about. And those emotions are important. But there are a lot of things that we can continue to celebrate together.
Yeah, and I think finding those points of commonality is the best way to enter into empathy. And just recognizing, okay, I'm a person and I get sad about things. I experience fear. Sometimes I feel left out. Sometimes I feel out of place. Recognizing that literally every person on earth has experienced those same emotions is a really great way to enter into an empathetic headspace. Because being able to connect on an emotional level is what makes us different from the rest of the animal kingdom.
Yeah.
That cognitive ability to reason and to feel and to name the feeling and to connect with others based on the named feeling. It is my personal favorite thing.
Yeah.
And that being transparent and authentic is really helpful when you're just trying to figure out what to do and where to go and how to be. The empathy, it will find you if you are being your most authentic self.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are some of the inequities that maybe the audience or generally people don't notice that you want them to know?
So I will start with,
Seems like I asked you a really big question here.
I mean, you did, but honestly, unfortunately, it's not that hard to answer, you know? I think a perfect example right now that anyone could turn on the news and engage with is the difference in treatment between Ukrainian refugees who are white and Ukrainian refugees who are not. Seeing some of the stuff going on at these borders where they're like, no, people who are Black, African, whatever, y'all gotta stay back, while the real Ukrainians are allowed to cross into these other countries. And it's been a really fascinating thing for me to watch, because a lot of people who are of African descent who are in the Ukraine are there to study. So they're paying tuition at these universities. You know, they're not like freeloading, if you will, but looking at that and looking at the ways that different people are treated differently in the exact same circumstances.
It's jarring.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking, and it's a reminder of where we stand as Black people in this world.
Yeah.
And that is, there's so many ways that how we are treated as Black people are put on displays in the media. And this is just a reminder. And so I wish I could say that we are surprised, but it's more of just being hurt.
Yeah.
It's being hurt seeing people who look like you being treated in a manner that is so inhumane and full of hatefulness, essentially.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult. I think that it is important to highlight that, though, because it's important that people sit with that. That's that uncomfortableness. Like, that's sitting with that and realizing that we have some serious issues that we need to continue to work on as a human race.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
And also recognizing that, like, yo, you can do both. Like, you can be empathetic towards the Ukrainians who are suffering, and you can also be empathetic towards the people who are facing racism at the same time.
It's not an or situation, it's an and situation.
It's wild, though, how quick we are to jump into these binaries, you know? So that's one thing. I also think about...
I think about the book bans. I mean,
the book bans. Like, they're banning picture books, bro. Come on.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Why, you know? And it's like there is this fear almost of white kids specifically being exposed to people whose lives are different than theirs.
Yeah.
Why are we afraid of this?
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you guys are highlighting a lot of the inequities in a way that we should all pay attention. I mean, you've got your podcast, which sounds like it's wildly successful.
Whoa, man, that was a wild experience. Gotta love that. Yeah.
So what's next for both of you? What do you hope for this year?
I got a lot of stuff I'm not allowed to talk about.
Yeah, I was gonna say we have some
maybe
stuff.
when the cameras go on.
Yeah.
We'll have a conversation.
Little NDA.
I mean, what I'll say, there's more books. There are other forms of media. The podcast thing was amazing, and
there's some things we're doing together.
There are some things we're doing together.
We are. What I will say is that it is a beautiful thing, and I always say this is a beautiful thing to do work with someone that you truly love and admire,
and work that you enjoy,
And so this is something that we very much enjoy doing together.
Yeah.
I get excited when we have our little projects going on, so that way we can spend more time together.
You two are beautiful.
Oh,
I love talking to you guys. This is really, really, really interesting.
You're not so bad yourself.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yes, we love it.
Is there anything you want to leave us with that, you know, we should, what's the final thought?
Choose kindness.
You took the words out of my mouth.
This is why we work together.
I know. I was like, be kind. Be kind, be empathetic, be a center of joy for yourself and for others. Be gentle on yourself. Have grace with yourself and others. And continue to read and buy these books.
Yeah. The kinder you are to yourself, the easier it is to be kind to other people.
Well, you both brought me joy today.
Good.
Oh.
So you're already spreading the kindness.
Excellent.
So Nick, Brittany, thank you both very, very much for stopping by the South by Southwest EDU live studio. It's been a joy. I'm so glad that you guys are my first interview because it's awesome. So, and thank you guys too. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned. I'm Carrie Byron, and I'll be back with a whole lot more today and throughout the week from the South by Southwest studio. Now, you can see the schedule for all our upcoming interviews at southbysouthwestedu.com/studio. And you can watch all of our studio interviews on the South by Southwest EDU TV app, available on Apple TV, Roku, Android TV, Amazon Fire, and of course on iOS and Android mobile devices. See you later.